Professionally, I've managed big teams and teams across state lines, right? And amongst those teams, they're working with hundreds and thousands of clients, and communication is key, managing expectations, under promise, over deliver.
Sitting here thinking of your living example that you had already set, I even said to him, I was like, what would Nick be doing right now? Like, yo, what is going on, guys? We are in the beautiful state of Washington here in Nick's home, and we just want to talk to you guys about our experience in Chosen Leader and just let you guys on the inside of the conversations that we have in our day-to-day about business, about life, about faith, and just all the things that we are doing. So my first question, I just got to ask Nick, what does it mean to be a chosen leader?
First of all, I'm glad to have you guys here in my home to share life and do life. The notion of what it means to be a chosen leader, I would say there's no other leader but someone who is chosen. I say it this way, that leaders are neither born nor built to lead, one must be chosen. And I think that is what defines leadership, is when one person of free will chooses to follow another person. And we had this conversation with the family. I forget which one of the kids was asking, like, whose lead do you follow, Dad? And I looked at you, and I looked at you. I choose to follow a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. I don't have just one leader. Leaders are chosen by followers. A lot of times leaders don't even know that someone has chosen to follow them. So that leadership is occurring whether you know it or not. And so then we translate that even further into, if I want to lead, or even if I'm just aware of the fact that somebody might be following me, then the choices that I make become even more important. The choices I make as a father influence what my children see. Choice and leadership, in my mind, I can't separate the two.
In your answer there, you talked a lot about the relationship with others choosing to follow you or you choosing to follow someone else. At what point do you feel you chose to follow yourself?
I wonder if I even did choose to follow myself. Like, what's an easier answer is, when did I make the choice to follow God?
Of course.
I think the choice to follow myself is not like a singular event. Like, it didn't just happen. It happens over and over and over again. My choice to go left or to go right, and then my own following of myself in that. Following requires vulnerability. It requires submission, a submission of safety and security and protection to another, right? Like, you say, hey, follow me down this path. I could second guess, I could doubt, I could question, or I could just choose to commit. Maybe that's a word that comes up, right? So I'm gonna say I do that daily, choosing to follow myself. On the backside of that is the choices that I make to be a man who I think is worthy of following. Those intentional choices, stacking up those consistent wins, or even being disciplined in areas where I know I'm a trustworthy man. That choice happened a couple of years ago.
So how do you feel in choosing to follow yourself and trusting yourself? How do you feel that has impacted your ability leading others?
There were times where I was in a leadership role, working in a company, where I felt like not just imposter syndrome, but I felt like I was showing up as somebody that I wasn't really. Because there's a lot of times where I'm stepping into something that I've never done before. That's kind of the ethos of imposter syndrome. But there were other times where I was doing things that were just out of alignment, out of congruence with like who I am. And when I kind of was like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm gonna be authentic, I'm gonna be true. The world responded in a different way. It kind of validated that. And there were some people that they were thrown off a bit by how I would show up, but I let people see me, let people know me, and the relationships actually with others got deeper.
One thing I say about relationships is just that the depth of your relationships is determined based on the percentage in which you feel understood. So when you show up as you, there's no misalignment in ultimately we have one identity, and I believe that identity is Son of God, your identity rooted in Christ. You have one identity, and when you chose to show up as yourself, you felt more understood, because it's here I am, Nick, not here I am, Nick, when I'm with the guys, or here I am, Nick, when I'm at home, Nick at work. It's just Nick. And I think that is another big piece of developing deep relationships. If I don't understand who I am deeply, how do I connect with someone else deeply?
This weekend, when you guys have been here, there is an integration of two of my worlds. My relationship with you two men has been friendly and professional. Like, we're friends, but you guys have gone through the Prepare to Lead course, but now like we're in my home, right? And so my family is now being exposed to a relationship, my relationship with you guys. And and they're seeing me show up different, right? There's this element of like, what are the different layers of me that I'm now showing to my family by having you guys here? It's been a very interesting experience. And on the flip side, like you have known me, like we met through Twitter. You saw me walking through IVB. We hung out, we went camping when you were here for Mitch's wedding. And then we got to know each other over Zoom going through the course. But now you're seeing me with my family, and you're seeing me show up, responding to my kids and in relationship with my wife. This is a really interesting experiment.
Absolutely.
I used to believe that there was a work Nick and a home Nick. There's a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9. Where I'm at right now is that I'm the same person. But then I also will talk about in the coursework, like how you show up matters. With you guys here, I show up a little different than I do day to day with Ariana and the kids, because you're guests here in my home, and I'm leaning in a little bit to the relationship that we have that's familiar, that they don't see. And it's because I want you to be comfortable here in the home.
I just think your skill set and ability to allot time accordingly and communicate effectively, you're able to do that efficiently based on your communication.
Professionally, I've managed big teams and teams across state lines, right? And amongst those teams, they're working with hundreds and thousands of clients, and we've gone through some big stuff, or I've gone through some big stuff in that professional setting. And communication is key, managing expectations, under promise, over deliver. Paden, we got you back on that inner tube. So what's standing in your way? What's at risk if you get on that tube? And he's like, I'm gonna be cold. So if I make you warm, then it's not about the tube. Like, well, okay, yeah. So now I gotta solve the warm problem, not the tube problem. It's also like knowing which of the kids I need to tell we're leaving at 9 when we're actually leaving at 9:30. It's knowing how everybody shows up, what levers to pull and where to push, not too much and just enough. I'll tell you what I appreciated. On one level, I knew I could just hand you the keys, quite literally, take the car, take the boat, put it in the water. I'm feeling good about the influence that you have on my son and my other daughter.
Well, I just want to highlight a point of that trust that you gave to us in that moment. One, we understood it, saw it, respected it. But two, when we went to take the action of taking the boat out, of getting the car ready, getting gas, whatever, making sure everything was ready, I was sitting here thinking of your living example that you had already set, the past 2 days of us going out, whether it was for the hike or for the boat. Sitting here thinking, I even said to him, I was like, what would Nick be doing right now? Like, there's so many parts here, like I got to think of everything. So just having that example and seeing you do it had me trying to understand the full perspective of everyone's emotions and all the things we might need, what might come up. And I know at all times, the rope getting stuck in the jet drive, we're not going to have everything that we need. But seeing that example really had me thinking more intentionally about other people. And I think it's something that I do have a skill set for in managing expectations of relationships. I mean, with a community of 140 people, you got a lot of expectations to manage there, a lot you got to deliver on to a lot of people. But it was just amazing to see how that influenced me 12 hours after. I believe the best mentors follow their mentees. If the mentees are worth following, of course. I'm sure it's not everyone like that, but I've just noticed that I felt you've chosen to follow us.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's really empowered me to think about, who am I leading? How do I choose to follow them? And how can I acknowledge that to them? Because I think I have the awareness to understand it, but I don't think everyone does.
In the context of the leadership conversation, let's think of this as delegation, because you've set up a hierarchy of mentor and mentee. And so when the mentor chooses to follow the mentee, this is that shift in delegation, where I would define it as the assignment of both authority and responsibility, but in that order. Like I give you the authority first and then the responsibility. You can see how that showed up. And a really simple example is we're doing a backyard workout and I'm asking you questions about, what I should do. And it's so simple because that's like part of your professional background. You have competence and mastery in that area that I don't have. I know how to lift weights, but not at the level of expertise that you both do. We've established some unspoken agreements already. So for anybody watching to kind of backfill this conversation, Matt and Paden went through the Prepare to Lead course. We've established a hierarchy of mentor-mentee. And within the coursework, there's a conversation of delegating authority and responsibility. Making clear agreements is so important for trust and understanding.
Authority and responsibility and this thought of delegation, because this is something that I really struggled with before the coursework with you. 2 mistakes in business that I've made. Won't get into the second one, but the first one is this delegation thing. In hiring Paden, delegation, he's seen it. I just dump things on him. Luckily, he gets it and understands. You know, he knows me, so he's able to deal with that. But most people aren't. He's a type A guy. He's an A player, so he's able to handle that. But most employees are not. And in hiring my first employee, I made a massive mistake. Didn't have any like systems or SOPs or anything. So I didn't give him the authority. It was just, here's this job, here's this result I want, go. When you said that, authority, responsibility, I don't think it really stuck for him because he didn't have the life experience to hang that lesson on. But I did, and I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Authority and why you say in that order. Because I have to give you the tools first, the authority to come out with the outcome, and then I have to tell you the result is on your shoulders, but not in a bad way, in a motivating way.
I tweeted about this the other day because I had a picture of my son, my youngest son, Finn, hair blowing in the wind, sun in the background, we're going across the lake, and I'm like, this is what being a dad is. But it's not about sunshine and lakes. It's about, is the boat secure? Is the drain plug in? Do we have life vests? Is there a fire extinguisher? It's about teaching safety while we're having a good time. My worldview is that my wife and my children need to be able to put everything, all their worry, all their doubt, all their concern, onto me. So most of my existence is doing the 360-degree scan. We were walking somewhere and Ellie commented about like kind of how my behavior was. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I know every single person that's within 10 feet of you when we're walking anywhere. I need somewhere to go. I need that community of men that I can go take my stuff to. And listen, a lot of believers will be like, well, yeah, but you take it to God, right? And yes, absolutely. And I need men.
I think God is working through those men.
Absolutely. And so what you've created with Elevate is so necessary, and it's filling a void. And what you guys are building, creating that community, so important, so valuable. Now I want to ask you guys questions. What is the origin story of Elevate?
Before I give the origin, I feel like I should just give what it is. Elevate is a community. We're now up to 140 like-minded men with the purpose of growing closer to God and really giving men a foundation to stand on. And I think what we just came off talking about, you're talking about your family, your wife, putting everything on you. That's a lot of weight to bear. So we bear that weight together as a community. And that's what our whole purpose is. I had a friend in college. I was at a college party with him, and great guy, smart guy, intelligent guy, but he'd flunked out of college. And I was just asking him the questions like, how'd you flunk out? Why'd you flunk out? Essentially, he was just drinking every night of the week. But I was like, why didn't you reach out for help? Why didn't you reach out? And there was no space for that vulnerability. I had not done a good job in leading in that relationship and creating a vulnerable space for him to feel like he could share. So there wasn't the space for the vulnerability. Again, he was bearing all that weight alone. Now I know it's not the weight of family and the weight of, wife, but that's your weight right now. We all carry our own weight at different seasons of life. So he was carrying his weight, and obviously that weight put him down and out. That was kind of what clicked for me of like, we need a community for men. To add to that, I had made the decision to not go to college, and I did not get supported by hardly any people. I mean, both my parents looked at me dead in the eye and said, you're just not going to be successful if you do not go to college. My brother was the only one who supported me through that. And then I got up to Indy in the community that I had seen under Zach and IVB, and a garage gym like that, just a band of misfits. Everyone's walking their own path. So I realized, okay, I can walk my own path as well. That's what we do as a community, and that's kind of the origin, is just empower men and give them that foundation. And I believe Paden is that foundational piece that God has just maneuvered in perfectly. Give them that foundation to stand on, to walk their own path less traveled, or whatever that path might be. As I was building this thing, it started January 2022. I built it for a year, and then I realized I was really good at connecting and building the relationships, starting to not be able to do that. So one man in my time it's just not scalable. I can't develop, we have 140 men. I can't manage that many relationships, and my personal relationships, my relationship with myself, relationship with God. I just couldn't do that. So I realized we needed systems, we needed organization, we ultimately needed a foundation. And in January, this guy, he's in college, call him up over the course of 2 weeks, probably called him 3 or 4 times. I'm like, you need to drop out. He didn't want to be there. He had voiced that, and he was a member of the community at the time. He had been a member for 6, 7, 8 months. He had voiced it to me like, I want to start a business. I don't know what to start. I don't know what to do, but I know like college and this path I'm on right now just isn't for me.
Man, it was scary because for the past almost year and a half, I was in college pursuing that. And even though I didn't want to be there, like I still, still got a sense of identity from it, just being there, trying to pursue my finance degree. But the other side of it, another dynamic that really keeping me from saying yes was just the fact that, my parents really wanted me to stay in college. They had saved up money, and I ended up getting some money from the government because my dad was in the military. And so I got money towards that, and just looked like the perfect way to be successful for them, just looking at my life. And so that's what they really wanted for me to do. And just when he called me up the first time, I just remember that was the first thing that I thought about was, what are my parents going to think? What are other people going to think in my life? First thing I did was pray about it, just because ultimately I know God has the perfect plan for me and Elevate as well. So I prayed about it and ended up praying again because I didn't necessarily trust what the...
You said make the fleece wet, and then he said, show me again.
Yeah, I ended up praying about it probably 7 times over those 2 weeks. The crazy thing was, every time I prayed, Matt ended up calling me within like the next hour.
Wow.
Of my prayer. And I was like, okay, this is a clear sign. I need to just take the leap. And so I dropped off what everyone else was thinking about me in my mind and just took the action that needed to be taken.
Your story that I'm really grateful for you to have shared with me over this weekend is one that I observe of having kind of a rebirthing a couple of times, an identity that you lived into that then changed. I'm thinking that you're right now in what I would call a chrysalis period. Chrysalis is when a caterpillar makes a cocoon, and when it's inside the cocoon, that is the chrysalis. And what comes out is the butterfly. Went in as one thing and comes out as another thing. Right now, where is Paden Hodges sitting?
You stated something really important, and I hadn't actually realized it until you said it 2 days ago when I shared my story with you. But just that rebirth and that kind of reinvention of who I am, the start of that, an identity that got stripped away from me was, I lost my little brother when I was 13 years old. And that's a massive identity, just big brother, just being a leader in his life and to others around me as well. And so having that stripped from me, and then also later on down the line, just having the identity from sports stripped from me due to COVID and then due to an injury, and then walking the self-development path in trade-off for the identity of a high schooler, kind of a degenerate party animal, football player as well. All those identities were stripped from me, and I had to kind of reinvent myself every time they were. But where I'm at now, I feel stronger than ever. I feel more secure than ever. And kind of going back to what Matt said in the beginning, first identity is Son of God. That's the only one that can't be stripped from you.
Yeah.
Right now, I just feel more secure than ever, laying a foundation like I want to do and Elevate, but for myself first, and it just feels wide and it feels strong, it feels deep.
How important is it in your experience right now to be in this community of men as you are like discovering yourself and creating the future?
The community's been a game changer for me. When I was just a regular member, instead of building it like I am now, it's exactly what I needed at the time. Mm-hmm. I had 2 roommates, and of course my family was always in support of me. My roommates, just different season of life, family as well. I'm trying to figure out who I am. Didn't have a whole lot of people around me. And joining Elevate, becoming a member of that, and having driven guys, men of God, ultimately just around me, able to lift me up and just kind of propel me forward, has led me to where I am now. With Matt, building the foundation for Elevate and still being lifted up by the guys inside of it has been great.
I think of this demographic that you're serving with Elevate, this late teens to early 30s. How many men can relate to that story that are like, they're coming into their own? I don't know when or if I knew like who I was until maybe 19, 20. I kind of got a glimmer. 25, I was feeling, more in it. So that whole season of life is like discovery. You both went through Prepare to Lead. Why'd you do that?
Because of who you are and having just the opportunity. I just understood what the opportunity was, and just the experience and degree in which you carry yourself. It's just a no-brainer. And it was amazing for us. I mean, I have God is working tattooed on my arm. I just know God is working because, he's early in the business. I just brought him on. I'm like, hey, I got this vision of you being a partner. And he's definitely stepped into that vision. You coming at the time, hey, come do this Prepare to Lead, where we walk through our values, really figuring out who each other are through your course and connecting on a whole deeper level. Walking through our values, our vision for the company, walking through, just how we can communicate more effectively particularly with module 3, which you guys need to get in on module 3. It's the most valuable one.
It's like an under the breath comment all week in module 3.
Yeah. And just to dive into module 3 real quick, dip the toe in, like it's clean and clear agreements. And what that means is so often we avoid clear communication to avoid accountability. So it's like, oh, I might work out today. It's like, how much accountability is in that? And I've noticed that, you are always challenging our words. Yeah, I'll call my mom. We all know we need to call that person, whoever it might be. And you're like, oh, what time? Like, what day? How often? Like, just constantly challenging. Like, are you actually going to do it? And you made me realize that anything I want to do is just a matter of putting it on the calendar. I think I sent you that audio message. I was like, we were going through and you're like, each category of life, where do you want to be? What's your timeline? And I was like, I just got to put them on the calendar and they're going to happen. I truly believe that if they're in alignment, if God wants them to happen. Just why we did it, back to your original question, is just, it was just a no-brainer opportunity to learn from you, an amazing leader who has so much experience in leading teams. I mean, your entire life, ultimately.
Of all the groups that I've taken through Prepare to Lead, the two of you are you still hold this crown, the best students, because you'd show up and complete the work and be engaged in the conversations. And Paden, where you went in the exploration was really commendable, because the dynamic, right? Like Elevate is Matt's creation and you're coming in now to build with him, but you showed up in these conversations just as strong. Just as committed, just as engaged.
Like you said, it's ultimately Matt's business and his creation, and I still feel that. But going through this course together, just saying yes to it from the very beginning, I knew there was just going to be a stronger bond forged between the both of us. Just because going through something like this, learning together how to be quality leaders in the world, quality men, I knew we were just going to grow closer from it. Just going through the coursework and the questions you asked and having both of you in the meetings, it allowed me to gain a stronger mission as far as what I want to do inside of Elevate and where I want it to go and how I can help it get there ultimately.
I worked with another company that we've kind of shared some stuff on social media, so I feel comfortable saying Windy City Equipment. Josh Zolan, he's the CEO, and he went through the course there was 5 core people on his team and then another handful. He went through it with me, and the power of having the founder, the CEO go through, right? And you guys are the leadership team of Elevate. Like, that's something awesome, right? Like I have companies that will hire me to deliver the course to their teams where the executive team or the CEOs are not engaged. And I would say it's better. It's better when everybody's bought in.
I feel like we're still in the starting blocks. Like, I know we have so much time and experience and things to learn and grow from. And I feel like that's why we were so bought in, just because like we needed this. And again, back to God is working. When God presents an opportunity like that, you don't waste it. Your intentionality is at the forefront. I have it written on my mirror. Look at it every day. Just intention and Son of God. That's what's written on my mirror. Knowing that and seeing an opportunity like this presented, it's like, thank you, God. All in. Easy. Done.
If there's something other than module 3, what other experiences from the course stand out, come to mind, like takeaways?
I'm not exactly sure what module it was, but the envisioning process that you had us go through, I found that super valuable, because it's one thing to have words about where you want to go, but actually having a vision and a picture in your mind that you can hold and reflect back on when we're in the depths of our business, struggling, going through hard times in relationships, whatever that looks like. Just having that vision in mind, being able to go back to it has been super valuable for me.
Anything else?
I mean, the whole course. I think the leadership philosophy statement, I love that. Just having something, it's almost like a part of your identity in a way. And like he's saying, the vision, something I'm extremely good at is that vision. Just getting the specificity around the vision, very detailed, like you were saying. Like I had told you, I had visioned, everyone breaking bread around a table. Relationships are everything to me. So everyone breaking bread around a table was my 10-year vision. You were like, okay, what kind of butter were you putting on that bread? Like just that specificity. Yes. It's because I struggled with anxiety as a kid. And so I had to vision what I was about to walk into so I wasn't anxious about it. And so now, again, God working gives me anxiety as a kid. Now it's my biggest asset as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a man, ultimately.
To be visionary.
Just
be
able
to look,
to vision that. And I vision everything. When we're talking, I'm sitting here, as you're painting a picture about your family, telling me about a person or an experience in your life, I'm trying to see that experience. I'm trying to see it all. And that's why I love talking to multiple people. And going back back to what we talked about with worldview, how you view the world. It's your perspective. And I think every single person and experience you have is almost like a mosaic that's created your worldview. I think people, relationship with self, God, and others have shaped that mosaic. So I love getting the whole dynamic, understanding your story, and then going to someone else, hearing your story from somebody else.
That's a skill that you bring in to the work that you do also, is to understand, here's the thing, but what does it look like from all these? And I said to you, there's two sides to every coin. And you're like, well, there's three. There's the ring around the outside. Oh, Paden, when you talk about that visioning exercise, if I could get you to think about your vision for your future, your vision for Elevate in the future, and like your role in that, what do you see?
Ultimately, I just see Elevate touching the lives of millions. And the role that I play in that is laying just a firm and strong foundation for the business and the brand, just so that it can grow and scale to touch those millions of lives. I also see me just always being super involved, wanting to directly touch the lives of as many people as I can inside of it. Not just, build the foundation, scale, and exit, but still be a part of it, inside of it, and doing exactly what Elevate did for me when I first joined.
We were having a conversation earlier about strengths and weaknesses, let's say, and I'm doing this because I think of yin and yang and like the balance. And the two of you right now have like what I'm perceiving is this perfect combination of skills and abilities and gifts. And it seems perfectly natural and comfortable. Matt sees it and Paden makes it happen. And like the agreements and the clarity that's there. But you were talking about leaning into the inverse. And I'm using this language, but like you leaning into some of Paden's skill set around the ops and the execution, and him leaning into some of your skill set. And I'm not sure what your vision was of that, but it's coming to mind right now. It's like, I see this as the iron sharpening iron kind of conversation, where there is a beautiful synergy of opposite skill sets, but then an opportunity to then improve the weaknesses. That makes sense.
I think it's a mistake that we've made, trying to lean into the inverse. I think we just need to better figure out how to do it together, do things together, because we were trying to essentially just split, where I could be the front, he could be the back, the delivery to what I was promising. I think that's just us at the highest of levels. Was when I was alone, I can promise a lot. Now he just gives me the confidence to deliver at an even higher level, and that's something that from the course I do want to talk about. And so I think it is a mistake trying to do the other one's role, and I think we just are trying to figure out how to best balance moving together but not getting in each other's way.
So the mistake was trying to do the other person's role. Unpack that for me a little bit more.
Obviously you form a partnership. What you're saying of like these complementary roles, I first just want to touch on values have to align completely. Values have to align. Skill sets can be different. We have so much that's in alignment that we're able to have just such a deep relationship.
When we went through the values exercise in that first module, each of you had 3 values that were the same, and then there were complementary values.
So values, alignment, and then these opposite skill sets. But we came to form a partnership because we need each other to promise, follow through. And then we almost were like, okay, we need roles within the company to understand our lane and our role and to be able to execute, which I do think you need boundaries 100%, because you can't improve anything if you don't have boundaries. If you don't have the foundation laid, you can't improve it. You can't build upon it. We were like, okay, let's get out of each other's way, split roles. And then it's like, now we're trying to do these 2 separate things. It's like, well, we came together to form a partnership because of our unique balance. How can we kind of do this together? Not get in each other's way and also still be able to thrive at the things we're good at, handle the entire picture from front end all the way to delivery of product, or, all the way till customer leaves the door.
You're figuring out along the way, hey, I've got an idea about how this might work. We're going to give it a try. We renegotiate agreements. And then when you're in it, you check in and you're like, this isn't working. So then you renegotiate agreements and you clarify and you go down a little farther and you check in and then you renegotiate agreements. So along the way, those synergies that balance proportionally, it's like, 50-50, or maybe we like 70-30, maybe we like 100-0 in different areas, but we're refining as we go. We joke about module 3, we talk about the clean and clear agreements, and I just want to make clear that an agreement made once is not like, this isn't the commandments in the tablets. This is an agreement that we're all voluntarily stepping into with an expectation that there's a check-in down the road and there's an opportunity for renegotiation. And the accountability piece that is so important is that the person with the desire to renegotiate, if that's the case, is going to bring that forward. And then in order to do that, there has to be security in the relationship. In order for there to be security in the relationship, you've got to have established some depth of vulnerability. It's got to be okay for somebody to say, hey, I tried this thing and it didn't work. So long as it didn't cost $1 million or whatever that threshold of pain is, like, okay, we can live with that. I don't want it to happen again, let's be clear, but that happened, and so what do we need to do? That space to renegotiate agreements needs to be understood in the context of that clean and clear agreements piece.
I think a unique part of our story is that we aren't even near each other. We've been able to cultivate this relationship. I do think it's because of my ability to build a relationship. Like him living in Alabama, me living in Florida, we've probably been in person 100 hours tops, maybe. Max.
Wow.
And that's mainly at an Elevate event where we're focused on.
So I just have to say, you guys show up here this weekend and it seems like you've been friends for a long time. So that's kind of a mind-blowing.
A lot of Zoom calls.
Yeah.
So many Zoom calls.
So you show up at an Elevate event and it's like this?
Yeah, we're just focused on serving them. We don't get the one-on-one time. And I even texted him on our way here. I was like, hey, we need to get a one-on-one trip where we just go somewhere together. Yeah, we just focus on them. So our time together has been very minimal, and our time one-on-one building our relationship has also been very minimal. It's been over a screen the whole time. So I think it's just so unique that we've been able to do that. But I do think it's just because of just our alignment. We're just so aligned and we're so self-aware, and we understand that God has this purpose for our lives. We're not going to get in the way of that. We're just going to fall into line where God wants us to fall into line. We're going to move because this is way bigger than us.
If you were going to bring somebody on, you're going to bring somebody into the Elevate team. And let's say the community grows to 1,000 men. And so you need more back-end support. Where are you going to start in the process of, let's call it recruiting?
We brought on a community manager.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been crushing it. Austin, if you're listening, shout out, brother. You're crushing it, man. But values, ultimately, and also understand and have full belief in the mission as well.
And then once somebody's on board, you feel like you've fully vetted that values alignment on board with the mission. What do you think is the next most critical thing to bringing somebody into the team?
Expectations. So you have these values, you have this alignment when they come in, depending on their experience level. But if you don't ever set expectations, it's like clean and clear agreements. Going back to that, you need to set a clean and clear agreement, but also have that follow-up of hey, if you're not happy with this role or part of this role or whatever, there is opportunity here, to renegotiate and move. And I think that somebody listening to this needs to understand agreements are set all the time. Renegotiations are happened all the time. They're not a sit-down meeting here, okay, let's set an agreement. That's not how it's happened. We do it naturally all the time. And so the more clear you are, okay, this is the agreement that we have, this is the renegotiation, and it doesn't have to seem so transactional. You can have the awareness of it. It's something you do incredibly well, especially with children. It's just we have this agreement or this unspoken agreement. You've just understood and slotted those in your mind of okay, we agree to this, we agree to this. But they don't even know that, but you know. And so I think expectations, setting a clean and clear, hey, here's what we expect, here's that authority, here's that responsibility, here's what we want. What do you think? Giving them the space to communicate as well.
And expectations they will rely on some vision of the future, because you've got to be able to tell people where we're going. We're never going to get there. And there's other parts of the course that, like the discipline module, I almost skipped that with you guys. My instinct was right. You are two of the most disciplined individuals, when we went through, but there were still some things gained from that, right? Some perspective. So I'm glad I did. The 5th module on relationships, I know that was key for you because relationships is what you're about. Let's wrap up with some closing thoughts. I want to pray for a minute. I want to pray with a thankful heart for the opportunity to do life with these men. Thanks to God for Tyler, who showed up here to help us today. I want to pray for sanctification in Matt's life. And I want to pray, Paden, for your identity to be revealed, for your purpose, God's purpose in your life to be revealed. And I pray for all of us that your will be done through our words and our actions, our deeds and our lives, that we be used to glorify you. Amen.
Amen. I think that's the perfect segue into the question I said I was going to ask earlier about chosen leader relative to God. And it's actually derives from a Kanye West song. He said, human beings in a mob. What's a mob to a king? What's a king to a God? But in your theory of chosen leader, a leader is someone whom followers choose to follow. So what is a God to a non-believer in terms of chosen leader?
So a non-believer is going to choose to follow someone or something that isn't God. So a non-believer is going to choose to follow a person. And if we just stick on that place, let's not go into the whole false idols and like whatever weird.
Yeah.
A non-believer is going to choose to follow a person rather than God. Well, if then the choice of the leader is to show up in a way that they would be proud of, that they could have integrity with, there is a real possibility that a non-believer is going to choose to follow a believer, and they're going to see God through that believer and not even recognize it initially as God. Like, there are people who will look at you, and if your arm was covered, they would make judgments and say, there's no way that guy's a Christian. And so they're going to follow you, and they're going to see how you show up. And they're like, well, I don't believe in God. And Matt obviously doesn't believe in God. But then all of a sudden, it's going to be like, oh, wait a second. There are people who will choose to follow others. They think that there is no God, and they think that the other person thinks the same way that they do. But God is working through all. Then there's this other notion of like, well, timing. People were following my lead 10 years ago when I would have said I'm agnostic at best. Right? That was my posture towards God. But I'm the same guy, just have a different worldview, different experience, like different set of beliefs, you know, in that spiritual space right now. So if a non-believer is just, you know, like, I don't believe, chooses to follow someone who does have a relationship with God, that might be a path. The choice of the leader, in my opinion, in this conversation becomes really, really important. As a man who follows God, I want to show up in the world as someone who is approachable to everyone. Believer, non-believer, doesn't matter. I want to show up and be a representative of God that I know. And I want to show that to the world and to my children who are figuring out life, and to the people that I work with and the people that I do life with and do community with. And that is a struggle, challenge on a daily basis. Am I showing up in a way that I think is a reflection of the God I know?
Amen.